Hey, I'm Sarah Tegender, international speaker and trainer for a $40 million division in healthcare. With over a decade of experience working with healthcare providers, I believe that a healthcare practice should do more than just pay back student loans. Each week, I'll bring you the tips, tricks, and experts you need to build your practice both on and offline. Smart people take notes, so grab a pen or open up the Notes app on your phone as we dive into the Health of Your Business podcast. I found someone and we had a love affair over outsourcing. And so I, of course, had to bring her on the podcast to talk to you. You all know that I keep talking about outsourcing. Outsource so much that your kids think they're going to have different parents because you've outsourced everything. That's the only thing left that you're still doing yourself, which is parenting. But no, really, I believe that you should just work within your zone of genius, and you need the support and help that everyone deserves so you can help your clients, your patients grow your practice in the most divine way. And so, I've been talking about that, but I've been talking to you about a lot of do-it-yourself options. But what if you had a done-for-you option? So I'm really happy to bring my latest love affair, gal pal, with Moriah Artz onto the podcast. She's so brilliant. She has a master's of public health and behavioral psychology, 10 years experience in the healthcare field, and has her own health coaching practice. So she gets it. She studied as a functional medicine health coach with the Institute for Functional Medicine. People, that's who you want to help you. She is a master pivoter. She helps businesses and entrepreneurs simplify and enhance their effectiveness and reach within their health practice. She wants as her mission to provide affordable, reliable administrative support for busy health and medical professionals. We're going to talk about, overseas versus domestic VAs, creating a culture with your virtual assistants. There's going to be lots of great stuff I want you to hear directly from Moriah. Go to the show notes if you feel like you want to do a reach out right now. She's doing free consultations. So take advantage of that and figure out if she can help you get the team that you need. All right, let's go to the podcast interview. Moriah, I was telling you that I don't know if it's my favorite episode or the analytics say that it actually is the most popular episode. But if you wanted to give me something or send me something, don't send me flowers. Don't give me chocolates. Just give me so many credits in VA hours. Virtual assisting and outsourcing is my love language. And so that's how come the love affair with you has begun, I swear. So welcome to the Health of Your Business podcast.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's dive right into this because I have a million questions for you. How do you know it's time to outsource?
Yeah, that's a great question. So outsourcing is definitely not based on currency. It's based on your value that you can add by delegating some information. So the way that I kind of explain it to clients and the way that I look at it as if I'm putting in, a couple hours of admin and that is not hindering my ability to grow my practice or take on clients or do interviews or write my book or whatever is important to the growth of the individual or the practice, then that's fine. But when you start putting in time that you're like sitting there going, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. And as soon as that thought process starts, then that's an indication that something needs to be offloaded, which it could be a couple hours. It could be, I need to bring on a full-time employee. It depends on the scope of the practice or what you're needing to have accomplished. So yeah, I really look at it as I spoke with someone where I was like, well, how much is your time worth? And they were like, well, I can't really say that because I charge like $300 an hour. And I was like, well, you absolutely can say that. That's that's how much your time's worth. So if you are using 2 or 3 hours to do admin work that you could realistically be taking on a client that's paying you $200 to $300 an hour, that's how much you're missing out on, if you're spending it in a $10 an hour job or something like that. So yeah, it's really based on the return on investment and figuring out how much you're missing out on, and then having someone walk you through, okay, this is the potential return that you could get. But yeah, it really comes down to that mindset of, if you're sitting there and not being effective because you're thinking of 5 other things that you should be doing, or something that you would prefer to be doing, then it probably means that you could move move that task to an outsourced individual.
Okay, I love that you say that you as I wanted to add in that, it's not just about, okay, if I know that I want to work 8 hours in a day and right now I'm seeing clients 4 hours, and so therefore I have 4 other hours that I'm doing stuff that someone else could do, but
Mhm.
yet I might not want to see clients those whole 8 hours, because
Mhm.
the white space is really important too.
Yeah.
Like, just to have space to dream, just to have space to think. And I know we're not programmed like this. I think about my kids who are in school, and, from the time that the bell rings in the morning to the time the bell rings in the afternoon, they're totally scheduled with very little white space, like very little. My daughter said to me the other day, she said, "Ooh, it's Wednesday. Today we get free choice day." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, that's where we get to decide whatever we want to do." And I'm
Mhm.
sure that's just 20 minutes, but how incredible is it that as a little 7-year old, like, she knows that she's craving that time to be creative. She said, "That's when we can play kitchen. That's when we can play Play-Doh. That's when we can just, sit and be creative."
Mhm.
My son, who's 3 this morning, he said, "Mama, can we take another walk this morning?" Like, he even craves that white space. And I think I learned so much from my kids in that, that's who we really are in our core being. And so we don't always, yes, you probably can take on more clients than you're taking on right now if you think you can, but we also want to avoid burnout. Like, that's
Right.
such a big thing right now. And so, I also have a clarifying question, because you said, you can just start with a couple hours.
Mhm.
So, like, how little is too little when it comes to outsourcing, in your opinion? And then I'm going to give an example of something I just outsourced the other day. But how many hours? Like, is it task based? Is it people based? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, if you believe that you can benefit from outsourcing even a little bit, it provides you a benefit. There's a little bit of investment up front because obviously, either you are spending your own time interviewing, vetting, like finding that person that can catch on quick enough to make that 1 to 2 hours valuable, or you're paying someone like me to do that for you. Um, but then, I mean, one hour of freed up time after you get to that point where you have someone that's functioning with you as a partner, which is the goal for outsourcing. It should be a partnership. Imagine the things that you could do. Like, if you had 1 hour where you didn't have to do anything else but something that gave you joy, or you had been sitting in the back of your head on your list for the last month, 2 months, a year, um, the benefit, the emotional and mental benefits, sometimes far outweighs the financial benefit, because it frees you up then to be more creative, like you said, to be more relaxed because it's not hovering over your space all the time. So honestly, I have some people that do just a couple hours a week. I have some people that do just a couple hours a month. They have one task that they do not enjoy doing. So they're like, can you just find me someone that can spend an hour or two on this every month and just get this out for me? Absolutely. So yeah, it really, there's not really a limit if the value is there. And that's part of what I do, is help you see if the value is there, if you're ready to do that. Or sometimes they need someone like you. Okay, you just need a process on how to simplify this so that you can free up some of those hours. So yeah, it's really just a discussion to figure out what your goals and priorities are, and then how to execute it the most efficient way and most pleasant.
I had a client and she was getting bogged down by research. She really wanted these Google alerts for her. And it was important for them to stay on top of the Google alerts for their industry and their niche. And they just said, sifting through and getting all those emails just seemed like it was a bit much. And I said, okay, like, let's see how we can create a process and outsource it and make it easier. And so instead, I brought on a freelancer. It was just project based. So it said, listen, I don't want you, because you can go crazy with this. I don't want you to spend more than 2 hours every single week on this. It costs less than $20 a week. And then I want all these Google alerts in these categories, and made a video, made the process, explained it step by step. I want all these Google alerts into a spreadsheet, and I want you to tag me, once a week that the spreadsheet's done. So then we can go in and we can just look through all those Google alerts.
Right.
And I mean, it was so little amount of time, and if that keeps you out of your inbox, if that makes it so you're more organized, and, it gives you a whole return. It, can be something very simple. It just, to take that off your plate.
Yeah.
I work with, some practices as well that are, still in like the personal service industry. So, they have things in the office, like massage therapists, for instance, who there's a lot of laundry that piles up, right? And so something like a wash, dry, fold service. But I also had a client, she's a dentist, and halfway through the pandemic, all of a sudden it was like, what's bogging me down? My personal laundry. And I said, wash, dry, fold service. Like, these things can absolutely help anyone. And it doesn't mean that it has to be a permanent thing. It doesn't mean, oh, now you never do a load of laundry. You always send it out. But, if you're in the middle of a launch, if you're in, a time where you're like, listen, I'm just going to up level, and I want to spend every moment I can totally in imbalance working on this thing because it's going to make me better, then get all the help you need for that period of time. You can totally change your minds later. So how do you make sure that it's not an uphill battle though, Moriah, when you're onboarding someone?
Yeah, so the process that I do, so there's a couple different options. One of them is that I just take on that whole project. And so I'll work with the client. I'll have our initial meeting just to kind of get a feel for what they're looking for, make sure that that's something that's within my scope or something that I feel I can deliver to them. Because that's important. Not every paying client is your paying client. So once I make sure that what I have to offer is what they need, then on the front side, I can do it all. I have templates for onboarding. I have my own process for posting the job, the things that I require, so that the interviewees weed themselves out. And then I go through and, hey, I'd like this. Can you send me this just to make sure? Or I'd like an example of this. And that's my process. And then afterwards, I'll come up with a couple that I think are a good fit, and I'll put it all nice and pretty on like their portfolio, specifically relating to the client. A snapshot of their face, maybe if they've sent me a video, a little clip of the video so you can hear their voice, see how they interact. And then I let the client say, okay, who resonates with you? And then after that, it goes back to me, and I'll work on creating, if they don't already have processes in place, I'll create the process for them. And like, here's some onboarding emails. This is the check-in time. This is the calendar you should use. And at least for a month, I'll stay hand in hand with the client to just make sure that they're either ready to take on this employee, they've offloaded enough that, okay, I do have some time, or if it's value added that I continue to do that, I do it for them. So
Awesome.
that's kind of the short version.
You're the reason. I mean, that's what I think. You need a project manager. You need an operations manager. You need an online business manager. You need someone like you who can come in temporary, or like me, who can be, someone who's just for a short period of time to get some things done. I think that is awesome. But what is your opinion on overseas VAs versus local employees? So give me the good, the bad, the ugly of both.
Yeah. So um I started off contracting as, a domestic VA. So that's how I started. But, um, my cost was higher. My cost of living is higher. So in general, domestic VAs are going to cost a little bit more per hour. Um, and we kind of, at least in the American mentality, we're always looking for the next best thing. How can we grow? How can we move forward? So the long-term loyalty of a project, isn't usually isn't there. Like the person is doing projects and VA projects so that they can create a resume that qualifies them for something greater. So those are the biggest cons in that respect. But on the positive side, obviously our culture is more or less the same, so we can assimilate to the culture a little quicker. We understand, I work specifically in the medical field here, but in any other VA, they're niche specific. So they understand the terminology, they understand, how Americans look at the social media, how they follow, like it's just part of our culture. So we can assimilate a lot quicker. And our communication is sometimes easier. But switching to VAs that are overseas, so their cost of living is much, much, much lower. I specifically work with, for the most part, Filipino VAs. There's a few that I've had, like outliers, that have been awesome, like very well qualified. So I will consider them. But their cost of living is lower. So the hourly wage is lower that can be paid, which obviously initially addresses that issue. Like money is always, even if we say it's not, it's always a part of part of the conversation. Their loyalty is like out of this world. When you find a VA that really connects with you, they they will sacrifice just about anything to maintain that relationship with you and make sure that the client or myself are proud of their work. They're very honor based culture. So presenting their best self is a huge part of their value system. So that's the contrast there. Sometimes there's a language barrier. So it depends, but vocally, it's not always the case. Like they can do things in English and they're comfortable with that, but they might not be able to communicate very effectively. So sometimes they're not great for forward facing businesses, whereas they can be back there gathering data and putting stuff together perfectly because that's what they enjoy doing. And the other struggle that I found is that because they're so honor based, they don't want to disappoint you. There's times where they will act like they understand and they won't immediately. If you use a term that they don't recognize, instead of embarrassing themselves and asking, they will go and research it. So it's a good and a bad. They won't admit it immediately if they don't have that trust, or they're still trying to earn your trust. But they will also on the back end put the work in to figure out what you're talking about. So yeah, it's really, again, going back to the culture that you want to create in your practice and how you want to develop that relationship, is really where you get the benefit. If it's easier to just be like, here, I'll pay you $20 an hour, just get it done. Awesome. But if you want someone that, maybe is a little more long-term, or is going to be an active part of your family at first, then the overseas VA is honestly a really good option.
I know what you mean. So sometimes if you just want it done quickly and effectively and just one time, it is sometimes easier to pay a little bit more. per hour, but like, what are you really spending in the long run? It's not much money. This isn't, you're not going to not be able to put food on your table because you're spending $25 an hour for
Right.
someone to get something done. It's really not. You can get it done really effectively. But it
Mhm.
also, I think it really comes down to how you like to communicate with people. So if you don't really have your project management software down yet, if you don't know little hacks like using Loom, making little screen share videos. What I find is, especially with my overseas VAs, I sometimes need to do things in a video and written and show an example. And then I don't give them the whole project. I'll say, can you do part of this project? Show me what it is so I can like course correct
Yeah.
before we've spent a long time doing it for that reason. So it
Yeah.
can take me a little bit more time to be able to do that. And then once that particular task is learned, it is set it and forget it. So I have a VA that, it's tax season here right now. She has for years been helping me gather data for part of my taxes. And it was amazing. I just opened up the folder. We didn't even have a conversation about it. It was just done. It was there. It was amazing. And that took a little bit at first to be able to teach that, but it's been years and years where I've been reaping the benefits of this. So that's amazing. And Moriah, do you recommend that people have project management software, or how, when you have, this is something that I find is, especially with medical practices, because they have the practice, and sometimes you could be really great at creating team culture in your practice. Like you'll do, Friday lunch together. You'll have a team huddle every week. You'll have, you'll perk the staff. You'll give special days off, celebrate their birthday. But then what do we do when now we're blending like an online virtual staff with our physical staff? And how do you create a really great team culture around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Communication for anyone, US VA, domestic VA, overseas VA, communication is an important part of culture, regardless. Setting expectations and building relationships. If you want a good team culture, then that's what you have to do. And that can be done, we're proving it through through this pandemic time. Businesses had to massively transition into all online, and the ones that have been super successful at doing that have communication in place. They've figured out how to get information to and from their employees. um,
And that's funny. That's like one of the companies, I forget if it was JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, like some big financial company. Everyone complained that they were just Zoom fatigued. And so they just passed, I just saw this last week, where they're no longer allowed to schedule any inter-office Zoom meetings for Fridays. Like they tackled that, and it
yeah.
became such a big thing. So obviously, like people that are on sales and client side, like they couldn't limit those. They didn't want to limit people's, sales potential. But in
Mhm.
terms of just one of those like meetings to have a meeting, how many people hate those meetings before the meeting? To eliminate that, I thought was such a great course correction from that
Mhm.
particular company. So it could be something really small, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to be perfect at it to start. The important part is that they know that you're taking that into consideration. And so like with in the past, that's been one of my tasks that I've been asked to do for a client. It's like, okay, we're bringing on 7 VAs. What do we need to do to get them into our culture, because it needs to be fast? And so I was like, well, one, include them in your team meetings. They were working in office, and like, let them zoom in and at least listen or hear the discussions, uh, reference them, talk about the work that they've done, make little like highlights of like this week, Jennifer got X, Y, and Z done for this project or this client. And then little incentives too, because at least overseas, because they are not so money dependent, getting a little extra bonus, they get so excited, because I mean, honestly, what it, in terms of like a drop in the bucket, a Starbucks coffee for us is a significant chunk of their income.
Oh my
So
gosh, but
yeah,
how excited do we even get about a Starbucks coffee?
right,
Please.
right.
Like,
Like
I mean,
I
how
could buy
many
half a
times
drink.
does someone like pay for your order in the drive-through and you
Yeah.
like post on Facebook about it for an entire week afterwards and you tell everyone like how that made your day. So you're totally right. I like even when I tell people like, here, I'm giving you $20 because it's Easter and I really would love you to like fill your kids' Easter baskets. That's like super, just like get them something from me. Like a lot of the VAs I work with are moms. And so I love being able
Mhm.
to say that, like, have fun, do something fun. Congratulations. It's your birthday. Here's a birthday present. It's what I would do for my in-person team culture. So don't
Right.
forget them. Don't forget that that's, something that should be done, should be accomplished.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, like your examples are perfect. Like giving them a paid time off, give them an hour. I mean, they're working overnight. A lot of times I had one girl who she would work overnight for me. She had an 8-hour shift. And then she would get her son ready for school. She would cook the meal for her husband. They would go off to school. She had a class in the morning. Then she would come back from her class, sleep for about 3 hours so that she could log back in to work for me. So there was a couple times where I was just like, log off a couple hours early, you'll still get paid. Like, take a nap, do something fun. And it doesn't have to be often, but doing that, again, if you're trying to build that long-term culture and trying to bring them into your family and into your practice, that that goes a long, long way to creating that loyalty and that trust that you understand that they are humans, that they're not just virtual. And yeah, it can do wonders in terms of the relationship.
For that reason, I like to pay people on retainer rather than per hour. And it's like there's these tasks, it's going to be, more for you to do at the beginning and, because you're learning and then less later. And then that way, some weeks I might not ever tag you in anything. And then I might like tag you in a fury of things, but you figure out and I'll give you dates. I think always communicating with tagging the person and giving them a deadline. Just the other day, I had something and it was a deadline and my VA was a little under the weather and she said, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to get to this. I said, no problem. I can do this in 2 minutes. I'm pretty simple at making like a Canva banner, but of course I shouldn't do that myself. I gave it to someone else, but she couldn't do it. And I said, listen, I don't want to explain it to my other VAs that don't do this. I have the last template you made. I'll swap out the words because she created all the templates in my brand for me. It's all there. So it was so simple
Yep.
to just make the little switches because of the work she did. Took me 5 minutes and I said, no biggie. Let me know when you're feeling better. Like the next task I gave her was a little bit further out. So to have that back and forth. But Mariah, I want to get your take on this because a lot of people will say like it's not fair, to use VAs overseas because they don't make as much. You should just pay people, what you would pay people. And it's not fair because they work overnight. And I know like again, like some of the VAs I've worked with, they're moms or, that's when they want to work. Like that's when I work sometimes. I tend to try to take from like 4 to 8 off every night. And then I'll do another hour and a half after my kids go to bed. Cause instead of working till 6 or 5:30 or 7, like a normal person, I start a little later and I end a little earlier. And then I love that time at the end of the night. I make myself a cup of tea. Like I get my work done. It's quiet. No emails are coming in. My phone isn't ringing. There's no emergencies. My babies are all sleeping. No one's aggravating me. Like it is my favorite time to work. That's my zone of genius. That's when I got my college work done. Like that's how I work. So do you feel like I ask people like, well, do you feel sorry for me that I work nights? Like I'll sometimes be up till midnight, whatever. But if I'm on a roll and I got some good music pumping, like I am happy. But you don't know that
Yeah.
then I sometimes sleep until 9 a.m. the next morning. So, but I have that kind of life, I can do that. And so I think checking in and asking is really important. But for that same reason, I've checked in and asked people, and then there's been times where it's just not a good fit. And I have to say, even with my domestic VAs, that becomes even more awkward when it's not a good fit. So, and I just recently had 2 people that I attempted to work with, and in the same week, like it just went off the rails. It was not good. It was, very disappointing for me. So, what are the signs for you when it's not a good fit?
Yeah. So I'll answer your first question and kind of transition into that. So with it's such a US mentality or an American mentality of like we get to decide how other people feel. Um, it's their choice, they're offering to do that. So the way that I do it is I put on the jobs, I'll put a range that I'm willing to pay for that job for my overseas VAs. And then those VAs are able to bid back basically of like, okay, between this range, this is what I'm okay with. So for me, that allows me to know that that is within their budget. That's something that they're comfortable with. And a lot of times, they're going to filter themselves out. If they don't want to be paid that little, they're not going to apply for that job. But some of them have like 4 or 5 gigs that they're going at the same time, so they can effectively do that during their day-to-day work. And yeah, I would agree. If they want to work at night, they can. Some of the work, they don't have to work overnight. Like if it's data and they want to work during the day, they can take that data. Like you're going to be sleeping in your bed and you're going to be getting work taken care of. So yeah, we kind of superimpose our understanding of it on people. But it's very, very different. So I would agree. If you're not going to get mad at me for working at night, if that's when I need to get my work done, it's the same. They're humans just like us. So they're going to have the same priorities. They're going to have the kids. They're going to have the life happening. And it goes back to that communication. Just make sure that whatever they're doing is a good fit. So then going into when it is not a good fit. So I do my best ahead of time to filter the clients that I'm bringing on. I will word my job posts in a certain way. I'll add some extra steps just to make sure, are they paying attention? Are they detail oriented? Basic skills that you want to make sure that your employees have. And then if I'm not quite sure, sometimes I might send them an additional request for something. So like I had this awesome applicant, and I kept trying to get them to send me a video introducing themselves, and they wouldn't. And I was like, okay, I'm having this spidey tingles, like something's going on here, and could not speak English at all. So in some cases, that's perfect. That's great, because you don't need someone to speak English to your English speaking clients. As long as they can understand written English, that's fine. But for me, the fact that you wouldn't admit that up front, when that's a huge, I'm an English speaker, so that that's important for me. That client was done, even though they had an awesome resume, their work looked great. That wasn't the culture that I wanted to build for my VAs, and it wasn't the culture that I wanted to impose on a client. So sometimes you just have a spidey sense, like there's something not right. You're not resonating with the person. And there's no way of measuring it. It just, when it happens, you're like, okay, here we go.
You have to do that.
Yeah. Excuses. Like when you start getting those weird little excuses, for VAs, because there's so many that want to work, you don't have to tolerate that. You shouldn't have to with domestic employees either, but our laws and everything are a little different. But they offered to take on the work. They said that they were going to be there. They have made a commitment to you. It is your right as the employer to be like, you're not meeting this commitment. So either it needs a change or it doesn't. I'm a little more rougher around the edges, I guess. So I'm comfortable with when you cross a boundary, I can flip the switch and it's just done, which is something that I'll do for my clients if they personally don't feel comfortable. If it's someone that I have placed and they're like, this is not a good fit, I'll come in and have the conversation and be like, listen, I was with you through the onboarding. I know what we have requested from you. This is the outcome. So you get one chance. Sometimes you don't, depending on the violation, but again, communication. We're going to communicate with this.
Right. I love that part too about your agency, because what you do is I can almost outsource emotions with you, to be able to play good cop, bad cop. And sometimes that's just what you need. Like sometimes it's not a matter of can you do it or can't you do it, but like, do you want to emotionally go in there? So to, send a message and say, hey, it's not working out with this person. Can you just go ahead and take care of it? Is that in and of itself is a big outsourcing thing. So that is beautiful. So tell me a little bit about like, how can your agency help? How do we get started? How do we contact you? Give me all the things.
Yeah. So we do, I do have a website. So it's hireamedicalvirtualassistant.com. Tried to keep it simple. It's long, but it has all those words. It's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways that you can get started. There is like a business assessment or a needs assessment quiz, like a little, answer a few questions, and based on your answers, it kind of automatically guides you to a specific pre-made package that I have. But then we also get a free consult. So if you filled out a quiz, I'll send you an email like, hey, sign up for this consult, or you can just off the bat, hey, I want to talk to you and figure this out. If it sounds like something that's a good fit for both of us, I can provide you the value you need and it's worth it to you. Then we'll do upfront, there's a deposit, and I'll do a strategy session. I'm going to get as much information from you as possible, and I will start the hiring and weeding and doing all of that fun stuff. In terms of what package or how you want to go about it, some people, they don't quite understand the value of a VA versus an employee, or just doing it yourself. So sometimes the budget is pretty low. So I will get you started. I'll get you a person, and then I'll answer a few questions. And if you see that it's worth moving forward, awesome, we'll do that. And if not, then, it's not a good fit. Otherwise, I have, I'll create like onboarding docs, like templates. I'll create some of those onboarding emails, do some things, because ultimately I want my clients to be able to move forward and be independent. So I don't want them to have to keep coming back to me. The whole point is to give them the tools and help them get to a point where, hey, if we can do this on my own now, I can be independent. So on some of the projects, I'll provide those onboarding documents that are templated, so that if they hire a new VA, they can do that completely on their own and reuse that information. I'll screen, hire, and fire if that's something that you want. And then continued support is optional. I don't build my practice to be there forever with you. My goal, again, is to get you independent. So it's all depending on the value that you feel you can receive, and then what I can reasonably give you based on your needs. So
I know I'm excited to meet you and to send some clients your way. And I hope people reach out to you, because my community here, the girlfriends that listen to the Healthier Business podcast, should just be working within their zone of genius. They are totally rock stars in what they're doing. So Moriah, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for being an amazing resource to providers.
Yes, thank you. I'm thoroughly enjoying this little love relationship we've got going on. So this will be awesome. Yes.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening. I want to hang out with you more. I truly believe your success is related to the people you spend the most time with. That's why I created the free community, the Girlfriends Group of Health Practitioners. It's a safe space for you to connect with other soul practitioners who don't just want to keep the doors of their practice open, but they want to impact the health of their community. Head over to www.saratugender.com and hit the tab at the top that says Group. Go in there and introduce yourself today. I'll see you soon.